Hey, what's up guys? We're back again with another deck profile, and I have a top 8 deck profile from the Jacksonville Regional. My friend Tyler went down there, got top 8. He's kind enough to share the deck profile. So his build was 45 cards. He played 1 World Legacy World Wand, 1 Orcust Symbol Skeleton, 2 Orcust Nightmare, 3 Orcust Heart Horror, 1 Neospace and Aqua Dolphin, 3 Neospace Connector, 1 Phantom Sky Blaster, 1 Phantom Knights of the Ancient Cloak, 2 Silent Boot, 3 Danger Jackalope, 3 Snake, 3 Effect Veiler, 3 Ash Blossom, 2 Phantasme, 1 Candina, 1 Curabane. For the spells, he played 1 Orchestrated Babble, 1 Trickstar Light Stage, 1 Rhoda, 1 Foolish Burial, 2 Terraforming, 3 Call by the Grave, and 1 Twin Twister in the main. And to round out the deck, he played 4 Traps, 2 Fog Blade, 1 Crescendo, and 1 Shade Brigandine. Extra deck, he played 2 Dingirsu, 3 Galatea, 1 Longirsu, 1 Rusty Bardiche, 1 Unicorn, 1 Mermaid, 1 Cerberus, 1 Phoenix, 1 Boral Sword, 1 Borlode, 1 Time Thief Redoer, and 1 Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. Alright, going to the side deck, he sided 2 Twin Twister, 3 Lancia, 2 Mind Control, 2 Pankratops, 2 Denko, 2 Radiant, and 2 Super Polymerization. His tournament report, round 1, he won 2-0 against Thunder Dragon. Round 2, he lost 1-2 versus Orcust Danger Trickstar. Round 3, he got a tie with the Orcust Danger Luna Light deck. Round 4, he won 2-0 versus Invoked. Round 5, 2-0 win against True Draco. Round 6, 2-0 win against Dragons. And round 7, a 2-1 win against Orcust Predaplant. Okay, Brian gave me the option to use Sky Striker stuff, and he thought that was more powerful, but he didn't want to play more than 45 cards, and he hadn't tested it, so he didn't want to change his build. He'd like to play less, but he didn't feel like anything was cuttable with the limited amount of testing he'd done beforehand. Most people play however many cards, because you can technically play any amount of cards. As long as you get to Mermaid, you have the combo. That's true. Problem with that is you also decrease the odds of seeing stuff like Call by the Grave, Neospace Connector, and side deck cards, which isn't worth the trade-off in his opinion. He felt everything was fine with the main. The Trickstar engine was really strong, and he said he could play Nessie. It's just as good as the others, but he didn't want to go above 45. If you chose to play Nessie, it would make Dark Grepher a lot stronger. He summoned everything in the extra deck outside of Borlode. He did need the second Mermaid 1 time, but otherwise 1 was fine. Borlode is technically cuttable, but it's really powerful against certain matchups and in grind games. He never needed Breaksword, but he did like it in theory, in like a grindier sort of game. And he only needed the 3rd Galatea once, and even then it was kind of a luxury play, so probably cut that to 2. 2 Dingirsu is absolutely staple. The side deck, he viewed it differently than he saw a lot of other lists. He didn't see a point of siding a bunch of good going first cards, because the deck is already really good going first. It feels like the definition of a win more to do that. He barely sided going first all day, outside of bringing in Lancia because it was so powerful even when he went first, and Super Poly because it can interrupt his opponent's boards. Denko Sekka is not needed. He was afraid of the heavy back row decks and Mind Burn, but there are probably better options to side, and you have to open extremely well alongside it to still combo. Mind Control is good versus everything, so he's going to up that to 3, and he never drew Radiant or Pankratops, but they're obviously good at what they do. Super Poly was good because it breaks the Crescendo board easily going second. He could have sided Violet Chimera to give it extra utility versus Salamangreat, but he didn't think that matchup is difficult at all. They can hand trap him to death, but Orcust is inherently way more powerful and their boards aren't too hard to break. He says shoutouts to Brian, Clinton, Marcus, Jacob, and he's asking Doc to move back. Thanks to Robert for letting him use the Unicorn. He only summoned it once, but it's an important option to have. Amanda for letting him go to locals a bunch in the past few weeks to get his testing in, and all of his opponents. He never needed to call a judge or had a dispute. All of his opponents were really friendly and no one tried to shark him on anything. And FGC for life. Alright, so after he gave the report and the deck profile, I had a couple of additional questions that I just thought would be helpful towards myself and to any other player looking to play the game. And so I asked if he wanted to add any additional information, and he said most of his opponents were pretty normal, and he didn't think this approach to building is right because it's not a good mirror match, the Orcust mirror match. You can just lose if they draw stronger than you if they go first. You should be playing closer to 40 cards so you have better chances of drawing the cards that are game changing in the mirror, like call by, hand traps, and your side deck stuff. Most people are at like 48 to 50 cards because there are that many good extenders in the game. Terraforming was really good because it lets you hard open Babel if you already have extenders, which means you get to end on Babel and Crescendo, which is really, really good. So I asked him how many times did he get to go first, and how many times did he open well enough to prevent his opponent's combo. He said, fortunately, maybe only 1 or 2 times that he went first he couldn't combo. He won 5 out of the 7 die rolls, and the only time his board got broken was when he went first in the Lunalight mirror, and it took everything he had to do it, and he still had enough grave resources to outgrind him and win after that. So then I asked him how he felt about the game. Personally, I felt in previous formats there was a lot more back and forth, and the current Yu-Gi-Oh! Is more like break my board puzzle mode kind of thing. So I asked him how he felt about it. And he mentioned that he quit during the Extra Deck Monarch format a few years ago, and that he would never play Yu-Gi-Oh! Again. He hated the direction the game was going, but recently he came back, and this is how he feels. The format overall is pretty healthy for where the game is. He's not sure he thinks about it how most people do. If you're still playing Yu-Gi-Oh! You have to accept Yu-Gi-Oh! Things are going to happen, and you're going to have to sit there and watch them sometimes. It's not a good feeling, but it's going to happen. He played against someone last week at a case tournament complaining because he opened 2 hand traps all 3 games when he ran 11 hand traps. The game is definitely a lot different than it used to be, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's awful. So, my follow-up question to that was, well, how much time do you spend playtesting? He mentioned he doesn't get to playtest a lot. He played 3 locals in a case tournament with the deck before the regional, which was a total of 18 rounds of Yu-Gi-Oh! He didn't have access to Dueling Book, and he lives in an area where he has to travel an hour to go test. So a lot of his testing was just running test hands and bothering his friends in the group chat with a lot of theory talk. He wouldn't recommend this, and he wishes he could go test a lot more, but he did the best he could with what he had. He suggests that you make your testing impactful and make sure you're actually discussing and learning things and not just going through the motions, which is really easy to do. When you go to locals, you might not perform as well as you want. So then you just change random things instead of like really thinking about what you did wrong or how you could have played better. So a follow-up question I had was, do you have plans on going to Nats? And if you do, what do you think your biggest challenges will be at the event? So he answered, he's undecided on Nats, and he's never been to one even though he's qualified before, but he would like to go. But because of personal reasons, he doesn't think he'll be able to make it. So what he's going to do is going to spend the rest of the year going to as many events as possible, regionals and other events that aren't too far away to get more practice. So when I looked at his list, I saw he was playing a total of 8 hand traps. So the next question I asked him was, there was an event a while back where the winner opted to not play hand traps and focus on comboing. When I asked him that question, I wasn't sure what the event was, so I couldn't give him the full context. But when I got home, I looked it up, and it was the Kansas City UDS Championship, and that was the format where people were playing Goki, and the winner, Cameron Neal, opted not to play any hand traps, and he just focused on doing the Goki combo first, and then in the side deck he played a bunch of hand traps. But I didn't give that context to Tyler. That was just me doing research afterwards. So his answer to the question was, he thinks not playing hand traps in this deck is brave. You can't expect to draw well enough to break boards all day. Versus the weaker decks maybe, but in the mirror and other combo decks, you need to have some plan other than win the die roll all day. Hand traps can be really strong if you go second and set up a board with one in hand, because it makes it more difficult for them to recover and break their board. So my next question was, what advice would you give players in general who are trying to get their first Nats invite or top 8? His advice is, just don't fall into the trap of believing you are right all the time. It's something a lot of players do, and he's guilty of it in the past, and he feels like you can handicap yourself if you do that. He shared a lot of his opinions on the deck, and he's always willing to discuss them with people if they disagree. He spent a lot of time looking up Orcust lists on YouTube, Facebook, etc., and thinking about all the different card choices. It's definitely good to test and form your own opinions on your deck and card choices, but his advice is never become too stubborn because you like something, and just keep an open mind. The best advice to anyone trying to qualify for Nats or get through that wall of finally topping is just to play test. Think about what you learned from your testing. He thinks testing open-handed is really good, but his friends weren't ever down for that. Because testing open-handed, you can always, you can talk through your plays, talk about the optimal plays. It really helps you learn a lot. He also likes letting people test with his deck while he tests using theirs, just to get some different perspectives. That's one of his favorite things about Yu-Gi-Oh! And something he missed playing some of the simpler card games. You hand people two of the same deck, and they play it completely differently just because the number of things the deck can do. You can play a deck for a month and still learn new things about it with some of the stronger decks. And that's one of the things that he thinks is great about the game. So my last question was more of a fun question. It's just like, what kind of sleeves and mats were you using and why? So he said he was using Player's Choice White and a Spellground mat. He just likes the way the Player's Choice sleeves shuffled, and he never found another sleeve that he liked as much. Now the Dragon Shield mint ones are pretty close, but he wouldn't recommend Player's Choice White if you're on a budget because they do have a short shelf life if you play a lot. He's always preferred the glossier sleeves, and he really dislikes the matte sleeves and the way they feel and shuffle. He hates playing on rubber mats because he finds it a lot easier to pick up cards on a Spellground. But he does wish he had a Spellground with card zones to avoid some confusion. But he finished off by saying it doesn't really matter what sleeves or mat you use, he just uses what he likes, and he's never had an issue with either. So that's the deck list and tournament report and interview I got with Tyler. Thanks to him again for giving me that information, and I hope to see you in the next video.